I really do want to thank the gentlemen that were here, and also Senator Nealman. I know he's dealing with a family issue, but this really is a great opportunity for not only New London, Bridgeport, and maybe New Haven down the road. I mean, those Bridgeport and New London really have been active in getting up and running and having plans ready to go. And we're hearing that New Haven may be getting into the mix too. So this could be a real opportunity. But that's it for Hydro.
Where do we stand with paid family medical leave?
That's a Senate bill. It's my understanding that the language is getting fairly close. And then obviously it's going around shopping it to the members, making sure the support is there.
When are you going to run the amendment on the vaccine exemptions?
We just had the hearing yesterday. I know many of the members that were there at the hearing have started talking based upon what they've heard yesterday. There was testimony introduced. The majority leader and I have a thick packet prepared by staff to go through some of the testimony that was introduced. So I don't know if a decision has been fully reached yet, but we're reviewing everything that came in yesterday.
Would it be an amendment or an emergency certification?
It could be either or if we decide to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's to be discussed. I'll say this, the one takeaway that I would have from yesterday would be, I thought the DPH commissioner did a really good job. That was really my first time seeing her and her role in a public setting, but also there is Republican support for concepts. I will have meetings today. I can't tell you how many, but there is. It's not a partisan issue. And we'll talk to the Senate leadership as well today.
So it's not this week?
Who knows?
Who knows? Don't know
In
that.
other words, it could be this week.
Sure.
Are you determined to get something done this session on it?
It's not a personal issue for me. That was certainly very uncomfortable when things become personal. You need 76 votes and 18 votes or 19 votes. So the idea that there's so much focus on any individual legislators is not probably the right way to go about it. But I think that the numbers, I believe, are shocking. I think we are very susceptible to an outbreak based on those numbers. I have it was very emotional. I watched 95% of the hearing yesterday the best I could. And I would just say that those emotions and those concerns are real. But the problem is, this is the tough decision. This is the other people who can't get vaccinated. And that's why it's a very hard call. But nobody is doing this in a flippant manner or disrespectful to any of the individuals who testified.
Why didn't we see
And
many of
just-
them? We saw one. We saw one father speak out with an immunodeficient child, but there weren't many of those families to come to speak at the public hearing.
Yeah, and look, I don't know why they didn't come. We could all venture a guess. Essentially putting your family member out there in their medical conditions may be tough for some. I will say overall in the caucus, early on it was, that's an interesting issue. We should look more into it. But then when the DPH numbers came out, the caucus started talking about it a lot more. Go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I really think, the hearing was good to have yesterday, but the caucus is locked in on this issue based on the numbers that came out from DPH.
How many times has your caucus discussed this, and what of those discussions can you share with?
Yeah, so what we talk about in caucus, we do share, but the exact details, but we did have a caucus on it. It was a very emotional caucus on both sides of the issue. And obviously the hearing was asked for by members to not do anything until we at least had a hearing. So we had that hearing, and now we're reviewing everything that came out in it.
Can you update us on the toll discussions and negotiations as the governor concludes his toll tour?
Yeah, so there's no grand bargain being hatched behind closed doors. I will say that, but there is ongoing discussion. Where we need to end up, what is politically feasible. I know there's an event happening this weekend that should be interesting. I don't think we've landed anywhere. We've landed, where I've landed is, we still don't have the answer to what we're gonna do to solve our transportation problems here in the state to make Connecticut a more economically desirable place. I came in from West Hartford this morning at 9:30, and I was stuck in traffic for almost 35 minutes. And that's just me. So the frustration's out there, not only the safety, but being able to move people and commerce around this state. And borrowing's not the answer. We all need to come to the table to compromise in one way, shape, or form to come up with a plan moving forward.
One thing the governor that's clearly been effective, but it doesn't help us get to a solution is Now I think there's universal rejection of the idea of borrowing $700 million a year. I mean, I haven't seen an editorial. I haven't seen people saying this is the plan. I just a lot of no's. And so the governor said this in Greenwich yesterday. It's a good point. It's like no one wants that. A lot of people say they don't want this. So what are legislators supposed to do? And that's where we're still trying to figure it out.
How do you
There
feel
are
about-
22 days left, though. If you do not get this done this week, it becomes
Well,
less
we can always
possible
come
that
in
it gets done.
weekends. People would
Yeah,
love that.
I like weekends, but think about the other thing. There's $250+ million that's supposed to move over from the new car sales that in both the appropriations budget and the governor's budget didn't happen because we came up with other avenues to fund transportation. So this is definitely tied to the budget discussion too. If we're not gonna move forward with that plan and come up with other ways to fund transportation, we have to find a way to fill a $250+ million hole.
How do
Are
you
you
feel about the
anxious to
state
see more
ratting on
details?
drivers in Connecticut who don't pay their tolls in out of states?
Look, I have no problem. If you travel in other states and they're smart enough to find a way to get your money, you should pay them.
No, I'm talking about reciprocity.
Yeah, it's the only way ours is gonna work, and it's the only way theirs is gonna work. Governor Baker is on the news all the time saying he wants his $5 million from Connecticut drivers. I want my share of them from Massachusetts too.
Joe, can I go back to your 250 million? You know that a lot of your caucus is already having problems with the governor's budget. They don't like all the sales tax hikes. He doesn't want to give them capital gains. If you guys agree to say move some more sales tax money over to the STF, I think all your caucus expects is that Melissa McCaw's going to come back and say, give me some more spending cuts. I mean, are you guys trying to stretch too little butter over too much bread?
There's an argument to be made for that. I think we'll come to an agreement eventually. We just have to get in line what our priorities and what our direction is. And that's what the people of the state of Connecticut have told me consistently. Where are we going? What is it going to be? Is it economic development? Is it transportation? If so, how are you going to pay for it? The progressivity that was contained within our appropriations and finance package needs to be there in one way, shape, or form. I read an op-ed this morning, or an editorial by a group of Connecticut residents that seem to be doing pretty well for themselves with an idea of a tax plan. It was interesting to see that perspective. I think people are willing to pay for things if they know that it's going to that and there's a plan of how it's going to be spent and help us
Does
in
your
the
gut
future.
tell you can do a budget without a revenue battle with the governor?
Yes. Yeah.
And let me give the speaker some credit here for a second on, don't underestimate for our caucus what that minimum wage debate and that bill ultimately meant. You talk about progressivity, you talk about things. For some people, the frustration has been, this has been up for 3 years now. I mean, people talked about, we're stretching it out over 5 years. Well, it's really 7 or 8 years in many people's minds. And so that was a defining moment, I think, for our caucus so far this session. It was not comfortable to sit for so long, and nor was it comfortable for the other side, I'm sure, either. And it was a long debate. But I think a lot of people woke up on Friday tired, but also feeling like we really did something that's going to greatly impact 350,000 people's lives, give them the ability to provide stability. And what I think was most missed from that debate that I wish and I didn't speak, obviously, and one thing that I wish I had said is that many of the questions assumed, Keith, that every 19-year-old kid goes to college, 4-year school, comes home for the summer and works at the club. That's just not the case. There's a lot of 19-year-old kids who live in the city of Hartford who are trying to go to community college, trying to stabilize themselves, could have children. That is something that was missed in that debate. That was a real important moment. The speaker is the one who said, let's get this going. He's the one who rolled the dice to do it late that night. I think that's a big part, and that becomes part of the budget framework as well, I think.
Can I just piggyback off what Christine had said, and the time is running out, and the fact that, we're details on the governor's plan for tolls kind of trickling out. Do you think that will hurt the process in the long, that people want those details and more of them now, and dragging this out is going to hurt the process?
I'll be a little bit of the pessimistic person. I'm normally not. The details almost don't matter. People have drawn their lines in the sand, and they have perceived details. You can tell them 100 times to Sunday that there's no more 82 gantries, and there are 82 gantries, you all are lying. You can tell them you're going to get 40% from out of state, and you're going to offer discounts, and they say, that's not true, show me how. So it is now becoming an emotional debate. I think the one thing consistent in the details that matter to us is that we're maximizing the amount of discounts for our in-state individuals, that we're coming up with a plan that'll move us into the future to ensure that Connecticut's transportation needs are met. We have safe roads, and doing it in a way that's consistent with the federal government. Those are the details that matter, and I'm sure we'll have a plan that will get us there. The
Regular
question is,
session?
will it pass both chambers and get the governor's signature? I hope so. I know where I'm voting. You guys know where I'm voting. I ran for re-election as close as it was, being very clear where I was on tolls, as with many of my colleagues.
What's so surprising about the reaction to tolls? I mean, there really isn't. I mean, you know, ask anybody if you want to tax them, and they're gonna tell you.
It's a
no.
user fee, it's not a tax.
Well, you
Don't
can
use
call
the
it a
highway,
user
you don't
fee.
pay for
Look,
it.
it's a user fee whether you're paying gasoline tax, or whether you're paying a mileage tax, or whether you're toll tax. I get that, but I'm just saying, you know, what's so surprising about the public resistance and the level of public resistance and the vehemence of that resistance? I mean, it's not surprising, is it?
It's not surprising, but I guess I was always hopeful that there would be actually a pause to talk about the details, because in my opinion, the details do matter. But there are individuals out there that like to believe that no matter what you tell them, it's not true, and I don't know that you'll ever overcome that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, because there's a big trust problem up here, and everybody who is.
I've acknowledged it more so than not.
That's fair. But also, I mean, I think what I would say to the opposition to it is, what is the alternative? I go back to what we said, and if you have $11.2 billion in interest that you're doing over 30 years when you're borrowing $700 million, how's that going to get paid for? Interest rates are going to go up at some point. The environment's not going to stay this low forever, you know, particularly if we hit a bad patch. So people are going to pay for it one way or another. And again, I haven't heard anyone, show me an editorial from any newspaper in the state of Connecticut, one that says prioritize progress is the way to go. Show me one. There is none, because that's not a good plan either. And I don't mean to be mean. That's not the most responsible plan. I think that's, like I said, that's something that Democrats probably would have proposed 10 years ago. So
We need to meet in the middle. This has to be an issue to where there's compromise and people willing to take a tough vote.
Any idea if the pregnancy center bill might come up today, or is that?
I don't know today, but I wouldn't rule it out for the week.
Yeah. I just wondered, any higher education or education bills coming up, or anything on the shared services thing that the governor was proposing, any of that coming up?
So we met with our chairs of the committees last week. They are trying to do the responsible thing and really pare down the bills. I know the higher ed and commerce, we're talking about a big workforce development bill that they're working on. And you'll have to check with Kristen McCarthy-Vahey on the P&D with the shared service. I'm just not sure where that's at.
And you won't rule out the exemption bill not coming up this week.
Vaccination?
Yeah, the vaccination bill.
No.
every bill's alive
So
at this point.
that's, and where is the bill? Where is it?
Well, it could be an amendment, it could be an insert. There's multiple.
It's not the most earth-shattering bill to draft. You're deleting a couple of words, obviously, from existing statutes.
And so, at one of these similar events, are you going to tell us all about it, or just spring it on the public at the last minute?
We never do that. That's why we sit here every morning.
I mean, just on today, I don't think you'll see a ton of education bills. If you like Representative Staffstrom and Representative Blumenthal, you will enjoy session today. They are the vast majority of today's docket. So,
Are you doing the Attorney General bill for the Civil Rights Division thing that Tom wants?
That
we
could
hope
be
so.
up today.
Yeah, we hope so.
3 minutes over, Mr. Speaker.
Since we're over.